as possible. And Rabbi Yehuda Glick is not yet with us. There was a delay, but he will be shortly, I hope. He made Aliyah at 8 years old. He did his military service, including serving in a tank unit, the intelligence corps, and also as a combat medic. He's a former Knesset member, CEO of the Temple Institute, and currently serves as president of the Shalom Jerusalem Foundation. He and his wife live in Jerusalem, and he's the proud father of 8 children and a growing number of grandchildren. Adam, and by way of informality, we are dispensing of titles today, and we are going to be in first names. Adam, Becky, Shirley, and Yehuda, who will be joining us shortly. Welcome to Inspiration from Zion. I'm really pleased that you're here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's jump in. Each of us had parallel conversations with one another last week when the bill was proposed, and before, I think, before it was knocked out. What's your sense of any opening comments, but what's your sense of how and why all this happened, and then how it became the public storm that it did? And for now, we'll just stay in alphabetical order. Adam, you want to jump in?
Yeah, first of all, everyone I spoke to, and I wrote 2 articles on it so far, everyone I spoke to said that this never had any chance of going anywhere. This has been brought up by this bill has been brought up by Moshe Gafni from the Haredi Party every Knesset since 1995, and he does it to make his voter base happy, to say, yes, we stand against missionizing. To be really blunt and honest, they want to say we stand against Christianity. And that makes him popular with his people. It never had a chance of getting anywhere. Josh Reinstein had a very, of the caucus, he had a very interesting take where he said that the media was trying to use this to motivate the Christians against the judicial reform, which actually sounds pretty plausible, since that's the big, literally burning issue in Israel right now. There's burning in the streets, and the reason is because the Christians would be, oh, we need protection, and therefore we need a strong court, so we have to knock down the judicial reform. There's no specific political figure you can point at and say they did that, but this was seemingly an attempt to do that, since it was really a non-issue from the get-go.
Well, it was a non-issue, and you're correct in pointing out that this is something that Moshe Gafni has brought to Knesset many times before, but something unique happened in the sense that it was reported about differently, and it wasn't reported about in the New York Times. It wasn't reported about in the Jerusalem Post. It first came out in All Israel News. Becky, what's your thought about? I mean, was that just pouring fuel on a fire and then throwing in a bomb?
Well, I'm not inside their minds to know what their motivation was, but I do think that Christians and Jews think differently on some things, and so what to Adam might not be an issue that was going to go anywhere, to a Christian, especially from the West, the idea of taking away civil liberties was alarming. I was most alarmed by the idea that Christians in the West would somehow decide this was an issue to stop supporting Israel. So that was my main concern at the time.
Did you perceive that, or that was just a concern that you were thinking?
So I've lived in Israel for 33 years, and we've been working to change hearts and attitudes toward Israel and the Jewish people for all that time. And I can't speak for all Christians. We're very divided. 36,000 denominations, Protestant denominations. Last time I checked on the internet. And why are we so many? Because we disagree on something, and so we make another group. So I can't speak for everyone. And you know as well as I do that within the Christian church over the centuries, there's been a lot of replacement theology, a lot of the idea that we're now God's favorites, and he may at one time have had a real covenant and a real connection to the Jewish people, but they didn't act right, so now he's kind of given up on them. And our organization has really worked to fight against that. Now, most Christians don't know that they have been taught replacement theology. In fact, most Christians I know in the United States and Canada and other Western countries, they really don't know much about the history between Christians and Jews at all.
Sure. Shirley, you're nodding actively. What's your sense of why they became public and such the storm that it was now?
Actually, for me, the interesting thing was that when I go outside of Israel to talk to Christians, many of them actually thought that Christianity is banned, or the message of the gospel is not allowed in Israel. So I actually take pride to tell them, no, there are churches, we can meet on Sunday, nobody is persecuting us, there is religious freedom. And so that's always something that we're very proud to tell Christians outside of Israel, this is the reality in Israel. For me, I understand Jewish people rejecting the message. I don't see it as persecuting Christians, because the gospel message, unfortunately, like Becky said, it really has not been a blessing to the Jewish people. It caused so much pain throughout the history. Okay, so I completely understand, and we try to help other Christians understand that that this is why the message is rejected. However, personally, we do not feel any persecution at all in Israel. So I actually saw messages coming out talking about, now it's the end time. Look, Christians are being persecuted again. And so we really have to calm that nerve among Christians who are posting that and try to stop that. Try to tell them this is not towards Christians. It's the message because of 2,000 years of Christian anti-Semitism.
Sure.
So all the more we need to live out our faith, shut our mouths and live out our faith. And so that's our approach to resolve this.
Well, what's interesting, and now that it's I guess it's not a coincidence, but it wasn't really meant to be deliberate. I had a number of conversations, but it was conversations by coincidence, if you will, with the three of you that really helped me in a sense frame a very lengthy article that I wrote. The long version is on charisma.com. The shorter version is on All Israel News. But one of my criticisms of the bill was that it was very vague. So you could theoretically read into it that it was going to be a broad ban. Becky, you said civil liberties or religious freedom, that there could be persecution, and rhetorically, I wondered to myself, well, Becky, your husband is a tour guide. My wife is in the tour guide course now. Could that mean that by going to a Christian site and speaking, reading from the New Testament about Jesus, could that in fact somehow be twisted to become something that would be illegal? Could my hosting a webinar or podcast like this for Inspiration from Zion be something? And all of that it is taking things to an extreme, but because of how loosely the bill was written, it allowed for that interpretation. Question to each of you. I don't know to what extent, although Adam, probably you more for sure, because you're in the business of journalism, were the initial reports, it seemed like there were a lot of bombardment on this, especially with the message that Christianity was being banned. Was there something to that? Was it substantial? Was it fair? Was it clickbait? Or was it just a complete misunderstanding?
No, I think it was that whoever was pushing it had an agenda. Even the people who from the Christian side, they had an agenda, which I'm not really sure what that was, to be honest. There was one journalist in particular, I don't want to, I didn't speak to him, so I don't want to speak in his name. And I think they were trying to get a reaction, which is, like I said, they wanted to get the Christians up in arms. To be clear, for clarity purpose, proselytizing is not illegal in Israel. Proselytizing is legal with the limitations that you're not allowed to proselytize to minors. And I found out there's a addendum on the condition unless one of the parents
Correct.
belongs to that religion, in which case you can teach that person about that religion. And you're also not allowed to offer monetary
Incentives.
yeah, I think maybe a lot of it had to do with, it hit a lot of open nerves for different people. You know, I think maybe there are Christians who feel maybe not threatened, but if they can't, there are limits on proselytizing. It's also, Israel's the first time that Christians may experience being in a minority, and to be really, which is an unusual experience. They won't get it anywhere else unless they go to a Muslim majority country. Also, I mean, let's be honest, Jonathan. We all know that you and I are friendly and smiling, but there are Jews in Israel who are anti-Christian. They're xenophobic. They have a vision of Israel as as Judenrein, as cleansed of every other religion, and that's not a house of prayer for all nations. It's an anti-Torah position, but we do encounter it, and there are, and we've even encountered it amongst people who claim to be working together with Christians.
Well said. Well said.
That they so not to be, ingenuous. It exists.
It does exist.
It is
It
a
does exist,
sentiment amongst
and it's painful.
amongst Jews.
It's painful for those of us, for all of us. Becky, you were nodding before on something, and I don't remember what point it was, but it was actually something that we had talked about in a private conversation earlier. It's just as well that I'm not remembering it. But going back to the question that I asked Adam, was the reporting on it fair was it clickbait? Was it complete misrepresentation, inadvertent? What's your thought on that?
Well, I don't want to say anything bad about anyone, and I can't really guess at the motivation of someone else. I can speak to the fact that what Adam said is that it is interesting to be a minority. And I've experienced that in Israel. And in actuality, it has helped me to understand the Jewish minority in other countries, because I understand what it feels like to not necessarily be accepted. And I've been here 33 years, and it has improved so much. But I still don't expect to be lauded because I'm a Christian doing things for Israel. I still wait for the other shoe to drop. And I understand that in some levels that happens in the Jewish world as well. When you're in the United States or in Europe or something, that you're waiting for something to perhaps trigger the other side. So I understand that whole mentality. I also understand that there is an awful lot of history that goes behind everything like this. What I would like to say to Christians is, just as you don't view every Christian as being exactly like you, please don't view every Jew as being exactly like one another. So even though Mr. Gaffney keeps coming back to this, it doesn't mean that every other Jew in Israel has the same sentiments. And I think that's important, that we not get sucked into something that really is rather prejudicial. To view everybody of a certain nationality as being alike is really kind of prejudice. Now, I've been here long enough to remember one of Mr. Gaffney's other attempts. In 1998, actually, the bill was different. In that case, it was to outlaw any literature that might lead to the proselytization of someone to another religion. And that got the attention of a lot of people, including my former boss, who worked behind the scenes and also a little bit in front of the scenes to try to get that stopped. Because at that point, it was like, is the New Testament then going to be viewed as a book that you're no longer as a Christian allowed to carry in Israel?
Right.
Because it could be viewed that way. So Mr. Gaffney's been at this for a long time. And as Adam said, it has never gone anywhere. And it's interesting to note that he doesn't think it's ever going to go anywhere. I think we need to just call out for a little bit of understanding one of another. And that's something that comes gradually, in my experience.
Yeah. And
religious freedom also means something different to Jews and to Christians. And in Israel, it means I am free to worship. I am free to gather. I am free to read my holy books. I am free to pray. It doesn't necessarily mean culturally that I'm free to try to convince other people to change to my faith.
Thank you. Thank you for saying. And by the way, one of the interesting things about the bill, as much as I really disliked it for a lot of reasons, in a sense, it protected everybody. Because it did single out Christians and Christianity, but it prevented, I have a lot, I don't want to overrepresent it. I have Christian Arab friends who have a very hard time living among their Muslim neighbors. Mm-hmm. Now, in Islam, it's very easy, and I'm not castigating all Muslims, that's not my intention here, but it's very easy. If you're a Muslim man, you marry a Christian woman, lo and behold, you have Muslim children and they're recognized as such, and that doesn't involve any persuasion. It's not involved with conversion. It's not proselytizing. It's a marriage. I don't know how those marriages are registered here in Israel with our laws, but so be it. But an anti-proselytizing protects each faith community from proselytizing, and Christians are the minority here, really. And I feel that we have an obligation as Israelis and Jews, especially, to protect Christians and Christianity here in Israel. So I took that as a positive, but I don't think that was played up sufficiently. Shirley, you were one of the people first who shared some of the, for lack of another word, I think it's a fair word, negative messages that you were getting with me, I received from you some of the ones that you were receiving anonymously. And some of them were quite jarring. Do you want to talk about what were some of the most jarring or concerning things that you had to deal with in this?
It's just focusing on the perceived feeling that Christians being persecuted by Jewish people. For many Christians, actually I can say for many because I encountered them, that when they read the scripture, New Testament, ended about year 50, 60 AD, right? And at that time, so for example, using Apostle Paul as an example, he was persecuting new believers, in Jesus at that time. And so in many Christians' mind, that is what Jewish people are.
Ah, great.
Okay, because they
wow,
that is the Jewish people they know, even though Jewish people have gone through such huge amount of history and has transformed throughout history. But for many Gentiles, they don't know any Jews, especially I deal with Asian Christians. And sometimes when we talk to Christians, they'll ask, like, do Jews still sacrifice to Baal, or that kind of image, because it doesn't matter if it's from the Christian scripture or the Tanakh, it doesn't matter, because that's what they read and that's what they think. And so when some of the posts I got was, Jews are persecuting Christians again. And the again, of course, came from that. And so we really have to do a lot of education and have to say, no, that's not the case. I personally live here. I do not feel persecuted. It takes a lot of education. So and there is hope, because education is what's needed. So we just need to be patient and do the work.
Mhm.
That's
Right.
if I may, Shirley, that's a brilliant point you just made. Because as a Jew, when a Christian talks to me about Jews persecuting Christians, I'm like, come on, get real.
Exactly.
Of course, it
Exactly.
never happened.
Yes.
And
Yes.
now you're pointing out that
Mhm.
that the New Testament is a precedent. It describes the precedent for
talked about
Jews
it.
persecuting Christians,
Correct.
which
Yes.
I saw a
is
horrible bumper sticker, Jews persecuting Christians for 2,000 years, out of what you
right,
said. But it never occurred
Right.
to me because I don't think of that. But that's
right.
amazing that you
Right.
brought that up.
So in our education, we teach that, in the Tanakh, you see that Jewish people were worshiping idols. However, in the Christian scripture, you no longer see Jesus addressing any of that, never brought up idols. So from so-called Old Testament to New Testament, Jewish people transformed. There's the sin of idol worship is gone. They changed. And then from New Testament to now, there's more transformation. So that's what we're trying to teach when we teach Christians is, Jewish people are walking with God, just like Christians walking with God. It caused a transformation in us.
Yeah.
Same as in Jewish people. So
Thank you, Shirley. That's great. I neglected at the outset, I'm going to come back to the substance, but I neglected to make an important announcement. We're going to do our best to field all questions, time permitting today, and we'll go on as long as we can and need to. There were many, many good questions that I received in advance for those of you who registered early, and I shared with the panelists, so they had a little primer about what they might want to be addressing. I've got them printed in front of me. We're going to do our best, and I see that people are putting questions into the Q&A. I want to encourage everybody, without any commitment that we're going to answer all your questions, to use the Q&A feature here as well. And one just matter of personal privilege, I see that my college professor, Dr. David Blumenthal, is part of the program today, in whose class I had my very first exposure to Christianity and comparative religions. So I hope that I get a good grade as a result of this. Becky, I want to
Yes.
come back to you.
Yes.
I mentioned who you are and the organization that you head. And it's ironic, Yehuda Glick is not yet with us. You're here among the four of us in Israel the longest. And you represent a ministry that goes back to the 1960s.
That's right.
Which I'm always in awe of and grateful for. And in that sense, you always have dealt with a very delicate balancing of things, passionate about your faith and passionate about building bridges, as in bridges for peace. But it's not always easy. You serve a whole global ministry. What were the things that you saw or heard in the last week that were most jarring or concerning to you?
Well, maybe I can address something that is sort of mentioned in the proposed law,
Okay.
but is actually part of what is actually on the books. And that is that it is against the law in Israel to bribe or coerce or force somebody to convert to Christianity or to convert to another religion. The original bill does not mention Christianity. And for us as Protestants, as evangelicals, I can't even imagine why any evangelical would think it was a good idea to bribe or coerce or force or someone to accept our faith. Because if something is done by bribery or coercion or force, then it's not real anyway, because to us it's a heart relationship that we have with God. It doesn't have anything to do that you can make somebody magically become what you are. They have to, of their own free will and of their own heart, choose to be a Christian. So that whole idea of forcing, of bribing, of coercing, of pushing someone in a corner, I think that comes from hundreds of years ago, when it did happen to Jewish people in Europe, especially when people were persecuted, when they didn't accept Jesus. But today, in our world of evangelicalism, it's just mind-boggling to us that anybody would think that could be a possibility, because it wouldn't be real. So that's one thing that I think there's a difference of opinion or difference of understanding
Yeah.
from the Christians of today and the Jews that are worried about it, that are making laws like this, that are harking back to something that happened hundreds of years ago, and viewing us as Christians today like it's the same.
Yeah.
And so our organization has recognized that we can't change that terrible past. There's nothing I can do to erase it. There's nothing I can do to make it right. And so our whole emphasis has been, what can we do to make the future better? What can we do so that we can join together at a wedding or at some happy occasion, and we can sing as Christians and Jews, Hinei ma tov u'mana'im, shevet akim gam yachad. Behold, how good and how pleasant it is when brothers dwell together. And we're working on many different levels to try to make that a reality, where we can have honest conversation, where we can really be friends, where the other night we had a little discussion on the phone about some item in the Tanakh, and you said, well, it's this, and I said, well, in the Christian scriptures it actually is just a little bit different, and then we laughed because I said, if this bill passed, I wouldn't be able to say that to you, and you wouldn't be able to go
Correct.
talk about it. But as friends, we talk about things, and it's not threatening to one another. And I would really love to see the day come when Christians and Jews can talk with one another without it being complicated, without it being threatening to one or the other. So we're working on that sort of thing. And like Shirley said, we're working on education. We've been working on educating the Christian world about Israel, about why God cares about Israel, why they should care about Israel and the Jewish people, why we should never go back to the way things were before. I'm not old enough to be responsible for the Holocaust, Jonathan.
We know.
I'm not quite that old.
Both age and your heart.
Right. But and I remember vividly the first time that I saw actual newsreels from the Holocaust, and I remember just crying, sitting in a dark room in my college, just weeping that could happen, and going to my father and saying, how could this have happened? Why weren't more Christians helping, and so on. So my heart has always been not that I can change the past, but that somehow, some way I can make it so it doesn't happen again.
Thank you, Becky. I want to stick with you. I want to bring Yehuda Glick's not here, so I want to bring the elephant into the room.
Okay.
The bill at its core, presumably at its intention, was to prevent and make the legal punishment for proselytizing that much stronger. Becky, you're here the longest among all of us on the panel, on the conversation. What's your perception? Why do you see that proselytizing is a problem here?
Okay. How to answer that? That's give me a second.
Okay.
This is when you pull
I think
the
it's a
pin out of the
problem.
hand grenade and start.
Yeah, exactly.
Start
I'm
juggling.
trying to catch it or let it go past me. So I think it's a problem here because there are no young Jews. As our friend Moshe Kapinski says, we're all at least 3,000 years old.
Oh, good.
Okay, so I think that the problem is that the Jewish people have a very long memory of everything that's been done against them. And of course, in the last 2,000 years, unfortunately, many times it was people who called themselves Christians. Whether I would identify them as Christians or not is not the thing to judge here. But who called themselves Christians, did horrendous things, or turned their head while horrendous things were happening. And because of that, I think that Jewish people are highly offended by any attempts by Christians to share what to Christians is simply the best thing that ever happened to us. And most Christians have absolutely no idea that when they share what to them is truly good news, is something that changed their lives, is something that gave them peace and joy and fulfillment in life. When they try to share that with someone that they have come to say, this could be I really want to bless this person, it's not received that way because of the history. And so I think we come at it from two different places, and I think the Christian is genuinely nonplussed, doesn't know why he gets that response, because they really don't know the history.
Yeah.
And David Flusser, who was a Catholic scholar who wrote a book called The Anguish of the Jews. And one of the quotes in it was, one of the things he said was, Christians have forgotten the pages of history that the Jews have memorized.
Mm.
And I would even go farther, coming from the United States. I think most Christians in the United States never knew those pages.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Adam, let's hear a Jewish voice. Why is proselytizing a problem for us, for Jews here?
Yeah, to be honest, before I started connecting with Christians, I had no problem with proselytizing. Because because I'm like, if they can convince a Jew to accept Jesus, that's our fault. We did not present that Jew with Torah in the way that God wants us to. And then as I got more into connecting with Christians, and I realized that we're really on the cusp of bringing about a house of prayer for all nations. We're on the edge. We're seeing the glimmering of a new dawn, an amazing new era coming in, and we're seeing the pangs that are happening before the birth of something amazing. And the problem that I see I've become more militant against proselytizing the more I connect with Christians, because I realize what's at stake. If a person goes off and believes what he wants, okay, but the proselytizing generates mistrust. I can't sit down with a Christian who expects that the end result of the relationship will be that I will accept Jesus. That is, I can't sit down with him. And worse, I know that all my neighbors will not accept him as a true ally, as a true friend, as a brother. And that proselytizing is preventing the geula, is preventing redemption. It's preventing, because it's generating this mistrust, it's preventing the house of prayer for all nations. And that's the big problem I have with that. I've become more militant about it lately. And like Becky pointed out correctly, it's almost inconceivable to Christians. They're like, what problem do you have with it? This is the best thing. And it's like, to be honest, I love hearing about Christians' faith.
Yeah.
I really do. As an Orthodox Jew, I love hearing about their relationship with Jesus. It's like, it gives me something to strive for. I'm really that personal, deep relationship in your everyday, every moment. I have a best friend who's with me all the time. Gosh, I wish I had that. So I don't mind hearing about it. The problem is when the finger points to me, and you must.
Yeah.
That's when it changes.
Well, there's an interesting thing that I want to pick up on between what Becky said and what you just said. For us, we're born into it. And you and I suffered a physical trauma when we were 8 days old as a result of being born Jewish. So we don't even think about sharing our faith because it's just something that we were born into. But for Becky and Shirley, who have consciously, I mean, we do this at our bar mitzvah, supposedly, if you're mature enough as a 13-year-old boy, but a evangelical Christian who him or herself embraces Jesus is receiving something. And Becky, you said it's the most wonderful thing. So how would you not share it? It makes sense. But
I compare it to going to visit a friend who you really have great expectations, and they're like, here, have some chocolate cake. And you're like, well, I'm diabetic. No, you must have this chocolate cake. And I'm like, please, no, this chocolate, look, it's so good. It's great chocolate cake. Yes, it's great chocolate cake. If I eat it, I will die. Okay. And that's what I see as the proselytizing.
Yeah. Thanks. Shirley, you not only host volunteers who come here and spend the better part of a year working and living among us, but many of them are coming from non-Western countries. You also travel a bit in developing nations where they don't have any Judeo-Christian background. And you have to address the issue of proselytizing in a unique way. Can you talk about that?
So basically, for our organization, we want Christians to see the Jewish people, to see beyond the fact that Jews don't believe in Jesus. Because often when people see Jews or Christians think about Jewish people, the first thing come to mind is they don't believe in Jesus. And if they stuck on that, they will not see what God is doing. So they're missing out. So we try to help Christians to see beyond that fact. We want Christians to see the Jewish people first, before they open their mouths, before they have any kind of preconceived notion. And so here in Israel, we bring Christians into the synagogue, into Orthodox synagogue. And Baruch Hashem, we have a very good synagogue here, and which crazy we're members of. And so for the past 10 years, we've been bringing Christians into the synagogue to see how the Jewish people connect with the Lord. And when they're in synagogue, they can see there's a solid connection. They need to see that before they can think of anything else. Okay.
Sure.
So that's, and then when we go out, I bring videos, I bring recordings to really show off God's people who are restoring Israel right now. And really, we have to trust God to do what he said he would do. Often
what does that mean? What does that mean?
Okay, often Christians, another thing we educate was to help Christians to see in the Bible God's promise for Jewish people, and the promise is alone for Jewish people. And because earlier Becky mentioned Christian replacement theology, and because that replacement theology, so sometimes when Christians read the Bible, it's a total confusion of what God is saying, whether it's to us or to Jews or to whom, and often Christians just take the promises for themselves. And so the blessings are for us, and the curses and punishments belong to Jews. And if you read Bible that way, then yes, Jewish people do not have a future, but we need to help them to read Bible the correct way, to see that within the context, yes, God talked about punishment, but immediately God always talked about restoration, and that restoration belonged to the same person that God is punishing. Along is same as the new covenant. It's with the same people who broke the covenant. God says, I will make a covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. So we try to help Christians to see that. And these are the promises for Israel. Will God actually do what he promised? He's already bringing the people back. Will he continue? Of course he will. So yeah.
What do you specifically tell people, Shirley, when they're coming here to volunteer or to visit, as far as proselytizing?
So we actually bring in volunteers. We collaborate with Ministry of Labor, Social Welfare on their program called Volunteering Israel. And so we recruit volunteers, and we don't keep these volunteers because I want these volunteers to see Israel. So we place them in Jewish organizations. So they work alongside the local workers. And no, we tell them they're here to serve. They're here to serve and to learn. And they have to put that desire down for a bit. Okay. And also we teach them about Christian anti-Semitism for the 2,000 years, for them to see what the Christian have done to the Jewish people. Okay. So many of them do not know that history, but once they know that history, they understand why Jewish people feel the way they do towards Christianity.
Sure. Becky, how about you? Bridges for Peace brings lots of volunteers. How do you deal with that? Which is often an instinct, more than just sharing your faith, but actually proselytizing with the intent to convert somebody. How do you address that?
So first of all, in many ways, very similar to what Shirley just said, is that first of all, we help people to understand the reality of the Jewish experience over the centuries. But we tell people, we're not asking you to deny your own faith. You need to be a Christian, but we ask them to set aside the methods that they've been taught of how to reach people with the good news of the gospel. And sometimes I get the feeling that Jewish people think they're the targets of Christianity. The facts are Christians are looking at everyone around the world that doesn't know Jesus and saying, wouldn't it be wonderful if they knew? So you're not a unique target. Let's put it that way. At any rate, we have certainly helped them to understand the conflicts between the two faith systems, and we encourage them to concentrate on the things that we share in common. After all, 2,000 years of pointing a finger at the Jewish people and of trying to change them was not very effective for anybody. Wars were held over some of these issues, so we encourage them to concentrate on the things we have in common. And in fact, we have a lot in common. We both believe that God is merciful and that he's forgiving, that he is a God of love. We both believe that he is the creator. We believe that he has a great plan for all of the world. We believe he has a redemptive plan. We actually share a great love for the Psalms, the Tehillim. Both communities read them. Many Christians read a psalm every day, as well as one of the Proverbs. It's something that I think we share in common. We both share a hope for a future era of peace, a messianic age. Okay, so we don't agree on who the Messiah is, but we're willing to leave that in God's capable hands and to say, okay, how do we serve you now in this reality, in this place? How do we show the Jewish people that we have a heart to bless? We're not looking for Armageddon. We're not looking for the destruction of the Jewish people. We deeply mourn the fact that happened in the past, that the Holocaust killed 2/3 of the Jews of Europe and 1/3 of all of world Jewry. That is something that causes us pain. And we're willing, even though it does mean that Christians put aside the something that they call the Great Commission, the sharing of their faith with other peoples. We put that aside for the fact that we recognize the sensitivities of Israel and the Jewish people, and we say, okay, God, we're going to trust you with final status issues.
Okay. Adam, I'm glad you want to interject because you were smiling at something that Becky had said on those final status issues.
Well, I'm smiling at something that Shirley said and Becky said. Shirley, you said something that just blew my mind. You said you're trying to teach people to look at Jews, and I don't know how exactly you put it, to see us as more than just not believing in Jesus. And if you do
a lot more to that.
Yeah, and if you do that, I think the connection is just boom. We have so much in common. And even, I hate to drag it down, but these days in the politically polarized environment, we have an awful lot in common as well. The family values, the social issues, something I never thought I'd see. We have a lot in common. I've learned Bible, New Testament and Old Testament with Christians, and we both benefit. And the Bible is that important to us, and we can both benefit from that. It's two sides getting a new perspective. I think there and proselytizing gets in the way of that. And Becky, you said something also that's like, you said the Great Commission to can you put that aside? That's a huge
So
job.
I would suggest that most Christians cannot put it aside, Adam. And I will say this, we tell our staff about the history. We tell them about how Jewish people feel when they're encountered, and especially when they're pushed, when they're made to listen to something they don't want to listen to. And so we tell them, don't do that. Don't make people feel like you're shoving and pushing them. But we also tell them, we're not asking you to deny who you are. And if somebody asks you an honest question and you want to answer, you can answer. But that's a conversation. To me, that's not proselytization. And maybe that would make my Jewish friends a little uncomfortable. But if Jonathan, if you come to me and say, ask me to explain something that Christians believe,
Yeah.
I don't feel like I should say, oh, well, I shouldn't talk about that, So I think we have to, if we're going to be real friends, we got to be able to talk. But I shouldn't be forcing something on you that you don't want to talk about.
Yeah, I think it's when the finger turns to me.
Yeah.
That's when it changes. I have a few Christian friends. Oh my gosh, when they tell me about their faith, I go to synagogue even more. It's great. But as soon as a person turns and says, you should, or I expect you, or in the end of days, or if you want salvation, that's when the conversation becomes unpleasant.
Excellent. Thank you for, okay. First of all, I happen to love where this conversation is going, and I love that you're all interacting, and that's great. I want, with the responsibility of being the host here, I want to move it along, and I'm really trying to do my best to address questions that have come in before and monitor the ones that are coming in now. And I apologize to everybody who doesn't feel that we're going to answer their specific question precisely, but I'm doing my best to bundle them up. We actually, with Passover coming up, we could be here all night like a Passover Seder, but we're not going to, at least not this week. There were a bunch of questions that I got. I'm just going to read 4 of them, questions, statements, and I'd like you to address them, each of you, if you wish to, or not. What is the future of Christian missions to Israel? Where are we at in prophecy in this regard? What could this mean for end times? Adam, that was a set to you, and prophetic implications of this type of legislation.
If I may, I want to preface the answer. I had a rather enlightening experience when I spoke to Bishop Glenn Plummer. He explained to me, when you talk to a Jew about missionaries, it's like, oh, it's horrible, but that's not the Christian experience with that word. For them, a mission is a positive thing, and it's not about proselytizing. It's about service and acts, and that's something that Jews don't understand. So I'm sorry. I had to put that in.
All right.
So I don't know if you're aware of this, but my father was a clergyman, and his specialization was Bible prophecy. So I grew up hearing every kind of theory under the sun, because he'd have Q&As in his meetings, and I'd hear every kind of thing you can imagine. And what I can tell you is that there is a great deal of disagreement about what the Bible, both the Tanakh and the New Testament, has to say about Bible prophecy amongst Christians, and a great deal of theories. But sometimes people will speak about their theories as if it's absolute fact. They're dogmatic about their theories. And I had conversations with my father after he was retired, and said, Dad, I'm not sure about this theory, and maybe it's this theory, and so on. And he would say to me, he says, Becky, he says, you know that I like this theory the best. He said, but it's not something that is relating to your salvation. It's theories. And he said, we shouldn't be dogmatic about our theories. I've told Christians just recently, I've said, look, why are there so many theories? It's because the Bible isn't clear. It doesn't tell us exactly. It's not clear when, Isaiah said this or Jeremiah said that, whether that happened 2,000 years ago, or whether it happened during the Roman time, or whether it's still something in the future. It's just not totally clear. So I would be really shy about trying to convince anybody about exactly where we are in the prophetic realm. I just think that it's got a lot of theory in it. And I think we need to be careful. And I especially tell Christians that, because if we want anybody to think there's any credibility in our message, then we got to quit being dogmatic about things that turn out to be not true.
Good. Great. Shirley, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I want to talk about the future of Christian mission service.
Okay.
In Israel service. That's the only thing. Okay. I remember, so we do home visits a lot with, actually, when we go out with our Jewish friends. Many of them want to be a part of it, so we go do it together, and also social workers. And but we always tell the people we're visiting, this love, this gift is from Christians, and who love you. And often we hear the recipient said, "That's not possible. How can Christians love us Jews? Yeah. That's not possible." Okay, so this is something that Christians really have to work on. 2,000 years of history, caused so much pain, and we need to know that, and we need to have a repenting heart towards the Jewish people. This is really the number one thing. And also, one thing we teach about it is the Gentile attitude towards the people of Israel in the Bible. Doesn't matter in Tanakh or in Christian scripture, it's all very consistent. That those who love Israel will be blessed, and those who even smallest criticism, okay, or didn't bring out bread, didn't bring out water, and look what happened to those Moabites, right? So we need to learn from the scripture, go back to the scripture, to learn those Gentile attitudes toward the good Gentile attitudes towards Jewish people. It's for our own good. It's for our own good.
Thanks for
There's
sharing.
no other way.
I'm glad you shared that, Becky. You and I know, because we've done it together, preparing and serving soup, one of the projects that we do from the Genesis 123 Foundation. And to your credit, you bought me a bigger soup pot to make soup at home and then serve more soldiers. But when I go out in the winter and serve soup, or when I'm giving watermelon in the summer all around Gush Etzion, all the way down to and throughout Hebron, I will, as long as I'm not interrupting their guarding, I will invariably tell them that this is funded, paid for by Christians who love you around the world. And that leads to some fabulous conversations, because certainly young Israelis have no substantial interaction with Christians.
That should be bilateral. It should be actually symbiotic. Rav Pesach Walicki, he explained to me that I think that, the third temple, I'll go there, I'll bring my sacrifice, I'll show up at the Kotel Plaza, and all my Christian friends will come around and say, "Here, could you take this up to the temple for me? I'll have 100 sacrifices. One of them is mine." We're going to be a kingdom of priests. We have to serve the other nations, and if you don't love someone, you can't bring their sacrifice. You can't act as a priest.
I love that. Thank you for saying that. I want to begin. Go ahead, Becky, go ahead.
I would just like to go back to something Adam said before, saying that that he is encouraged when he hears other Christians share about their faith. And I just want to say that after living here for 33 years, that I have been greatly blessed by learning from my Jewish friends. Where we lived in before this, we lived right next to a yeshiva, and they would bring in groups of men from New York. And I would open the windows on Shabbat and just listen to the music, and it just was so calming. It was so joyous. In fact, I would stop them in the street on Sunday morning and say, "Wow, what you did yesterday! It just made my Shabbat." And learning from people like David Nekrutman and various people, it spurred us to jealousy for the things that that we don't know. The fact that you read the Bible in the original language, and there's so much that riches that we miss. And so I think there's a little bit of mutual admiration here, Adam, because there are things that the Jewish people have taught me that has deepened my faith.
Excellent. Thank you. I do want to read one comment here. It goes back to the conversation about proselytizing. This is from, I guess this is my shameless self plug from my professor, David Blumenthal, who writes at the end of his comment that I get an A for bringing us together. I want to know if I get an A for implementation, but I'll take the A on getting us together. He has a great long history. And again, I mentioned that at Emory, this is my first exposure to Christianity. He writes, having strong disagreements with others is part of life. According to the news media, we seem to be in the middle of very serious disagreement about very serious subjects. It's not disagreement. I'm old enough to have learned Jewish history such that I could recite all the dates and places of all the crusades, but the past is the past. So history is not the issue. I think the issue is God. That is the inviolability of the chosenness of the Jewish people. Proselytization challenges this even for Jews who don't believe. I think that is the issue. Does God love us or not? Proselytizing says the answer is no. How do we deal with this? If anyone wants to comment on that, but I wanted to put that comment out. Anyone like to respond to Dr. Blumenthal?
I think by getting caught in the bad narratives of the past, both of us suffer. I'm finding, at first I was like, oh, replacement theology is bad. And then I saw its effect on Christianity and I realized, oh, it's really bad. And most Christians don't understand fully what replacement theology is. It doesn't understand how it's so nefarious and how it's so much part of their culture. And at the same time, if the Jews are stuck in this victim narrative that demonizes Christians who come to us in love, we'll never move forward. We have to move past these things that are holding us back. Christians, and also you have a narrative about Jews that has to change. God willing.
Got it. Okay, so you know what? That segues to where I want to begin to wrap up. Tensions. I mentioned in my open that from my perspective, the genie's out of the bottle. I don't know if you can ever put a genie back in the bottle all the way. But certainly the bill, not the bill, it was actually the reporting of the bill, because as Becky mentioned, going back to the 90s, Moshe Gafni has been proposing bills like this. It was just this last week that it got blown up in the news media. How do we put the genie back in the bottle? How do we rebuild relationships or repair things that have been impacted just in the last week alone? I think for a lot of us, it was a big setback. Who would like to jump in?
Okay. I don't think we should put the genie back in the bottle. I think it revealed some very difficult truths that we have to deal with. And this is another thing I learned from Rav Pesach Walicki, is it would be wonderful if Christians understood what proselytizing means for Jews. I think that's really important. I think the Jews should acknowledge, and it's something that one of the worst character traits you can have is ingratitude. And I think if there's an enormous amount of ingratitude from the Jewish side that we have to get over. And I think this, in the midst of the crazy political stuff that's happening in Israel, this exposed, I think, some difficult truths that we've been avoiding, that we need to acknowledge and we need to work with.
Great.
So
thank you.
Yeah.
Becky, Shirley, you want to put the genie back in the bottle, or are we going to let it ride, and how are we going to deal with it?
I think we have to always be moving into the future, Jonathan. We can't deal with the past all the time. And you know what? I believe in a amazing, glorious, blessed future for Israel, because the Bible says that. The Bible says that God has a great plan for the Jewish people and for the nation of Israel. And as Israel steps into more and more into that God-ordained role to be a light to the nations, I just want to say that those of us Christians that get it, those of us at Bridges for Peace, we're going to be cheering. We're going to be happy. We're going to be so happy that to see how God is fulfilling his promises in the life and of the nation of Israel and the people of Israel. And we're going to trust God to work in all the world with his redemptive purposes, because as Adam said, it's supposed to be a house of prayer for all nations. It demands of me a level of trust in the Almighty. It's not me that's going to do it. It's that he has made promises and he's going to do it. And I'm going to try to partner with him as much as I can. And what that means for me and our organization is we're going to continue to share with Christians around the world about the need to recognize that God is really doing something. He is working. He is active. He's bringing the Jewish people home. He's reestablished the state. He's reestablishing the land itself, which lay barren for centuries. And to understand the great love that he has for the people of Israel. Yeah. He's not fickle. He doesn't just stop loving because people don't do things the way he wants them to. And the church, the church has always desired the blessings of the God of Israel. And so I'm telling my people, I'm saying it's time we recognize that there is an Israel of God. If we want the blessings of the God of Israel, we need to recognize that there is an Israel of God.
Excellent. Shirley, you want to add anything?
For us, it really doesn't change anything. Only make me realize how much more work we have to do. It doesn't really change anything at all, because we do not proselytize. We also try to really get Christians to realize that if they don't see Jewish people, there is a side of God they do not see. Okay. In Tanakh, over and over, God says, "You are my witness to the nations." And if we do not look at this Israel, we will miss out a certain side of God. And the Christians are missing out by not seeing Jewish people as who they are. So we want Christians to jump on this train that has already left the platform.
Very nice. Thank you.
So, yes.
I promised at the beginning to the three of you that we were going to save a question at the end for each of you, if you wish, to address to one another. We've been having great interaction, but before I get to the last question and then close, we're going to invite Amy to come in and close in prayer. Do either of you want to ask a question or address one another?
I have a question for you, actually.
For me?
Jonathan.
Oh boy.
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't prepared for that.
This is easy. You said you received email and messages from other Christians about this. Okay. Were there any email that's hurtful that caused you a bit pain to read? Could you tell us what they are, or is there one that you remember, so that all your audiences and us, and we can see what caused pain in you?
Wow, thank you for asking that. There was one specifically today, and one of my weaknesses, or maybe strengths and weaknesses, is that I engage people, and I got a message, an email response to an invitation. So it was somebody who was already in my database attacking me for having this kind of a conversation and program. And I didn't understand what the person was attacking me about. And so I engaged. I say, please clarify. I'm happy. Join us. We're going to address the issues. And the attacks got more personal and deeper. And at some point I just said, okay, I'm out. But I didn't really understand where this person was, but it was clear that it was not even on substance, but there was some nerve that this hit that I became the punching bag for. And it's not the first time, but this specific issue and this specific event caused that. Anyone want to ask anyone else something? Okay. So here's the question. Now I'm asking, in fact, I'm going to bring you in now, Amy. So you're ready. Promote to panelist. when we're ready for you. But what I don't think if I were only working with Jews, I would get a question like this from somebody. But among Christians, this is bread and butter. So someone said to me, in one of the questions in registration, how can I pray? So my question to you, the three of you, is not to pray, but what do we want people to pray for as a result of this? Becky?
Well, I want to pray that our communities will learn how to talk to one another respectfully, that we will be able to really honestly be friends with no conditions on either side, that we can talk honestly with one another. But at the same time, I would really like to get Christians all over the world to pray about the issue of unity in Israel. It's something of really deep concern to me that we have a situation where we have brothers fighting against brothers. So not only do we need unity between Christians and Jews, the two peoples in the world that both love the God of Israel, but we also need unity in the nation of Israel.
Thank you. Shirley, what do we want to answer the question? What are we praying for?
Praying for that. We Chinese always like to look at ourselves in the mirror. Okay, so for Christians to go back to the Bible and to see Israel from God's eyes.
Excellent. Adam?
I think I'm at the stage of my life where my prayers go something like, keep it like this. Don't keep it coming. Don't change anything. I'm looking at what's happening. And, people who don't see that we're so close. We're so close. Just be here, watch it happen. Don't put yourself, if I pray for anything, it's just to not let myself get in the way of the amazing things that are happening. I mean, you brought us together on Zoom, which, 5 years ago, give me a break. This is impossible. And I learned amazing lessons from Becky and from Shirley. And it's a huge blessing that blows the mind. It's an impossibility. It's mamish. It's a miracle on so many levels. So just keep it coming and let me get out of the way of it happening.
Great, thank you. Becky and Shirley and Adam, terrific to have you join today. What an enlightening conversation. I knew we got into the edgy. It was definitely honest. I believe we created understanding amongst Jews and Christians for those who are listening at that level, whose ears are open. But I don't think we certainly didn't answer all the questions, and we certainly haven't unruffled all the feathers. And one of you said, I think, Becky, it takes time. So that I will pray that you, the three of you, and that all of the people that we've referenced and the people who are here following this and who will listen and who will be inspired by this will take their own part, that we can continue to.
Can I say one more thing, Jonathan?
Of course.
So I would just like to say to any of my Jewish brothers or sisters that are watching this, that if anything I said was offensive to you, that it wasn't said with a heart to offend, because I have the deepest respect and honor for the Jewish people. Like I said, I have learned so much. And so I don't want anything that I said to be divisive. I know that everybody in the world wants to be loved for who they are, and I see that in the Jewish people. It's like, accept us and love us for who we are. And so I just want to say that we do accept you, and we're working to help other Christians understand that God has a plan and a purpose for you.
Thank you. I brought in Amy Ziwi, who I was embarrassed to when we met a few weeks ago, embarrassed that we hadn't been connected for years and years and years, but we should have been, and we have been operating as parallel partners, and now have the privilege being partners in a couple of things already. Amy is with the Jerusalem Connection, and Amy, I invited to close us out before I do some announcements, just to wrap it up, to close us out in prayer.
Dear Heavenly Father, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we just thank you with every fiber of our being that you can bring us together, your children, that we can interact with each other and befriend each other. And Lord, we just thank you for the technology and the opportunities to connect when you're ready for us to connect, and that we can continue to lift each other up. And Lord, for the work that Adam and Jonathan and Becky and Shirley do, Lord, I am personally so grateful for their efforts and am excited to learn from them. And I hope everybody who is hearing this podcast or seeing it can find that vision in their hearts, that by seeing Jews for who they are, we are seeing God for who he is. And Lord, we just thank you again for the many blessings that you give us, and that you can bring unity to your children. Lord, we pray for the people of Israel, all the people of Israel right now, as they are dealing with ideas and policies and wrestling with those efforts, Lord. And I don't assume to be an expert or to comment on any of it, Lord. I just pray that you continue to move your hand and give them safety and insight. And Lord, I just pray for the Christians around the world, that we never stumble in our own egotism or lack of knowledge of our collective past, in order to see the love that and realize the love that you want us to have for them. And Lord, we ask that you continue to bless the work of all these people on this panel, and continue to provide the resources to continue it. And we ask this in your holy name. Amen.
Man, thank you. Thank you so much. This has been a delight. I neglected at the outset to do a little bit of self-promotion just about the Genesis 1-2-3 Foundation. So I'm going to wrap up by just saying thank you for everyone who's joined, who's listened. Do follow us at genesis123.co if you'd like to donate. We have a place where you can do that there to help us keep programs like this possible. You can follow the Inspiration from Zion program as webinars and as a podcast, which is awesome. And also, one of the really exciting things that we're doing now is a terrific art contest for Christian children called What Israel Means to Me. And the website intuitively is whatisraelmeanstome.com. And we want Christian children from all over the world to illustrate what Israel means to them, and be part of this contest, for which we've already begun acquiring some fabulous prizes. And we're going to end the submissions in May and announce winners in June. So I invite everyone to be part of that and all kinds of other projects that we are doing, and I'm grateful that everyone was here. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you, Amy, and thank you to everyone who's joined tonight. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.